transmission cut through decades of cosmic silence, shocking every observatory on Earth. Astronomical instruments worldwide registered the same unmistakable pattern, deliberate, structured, and undeniably artificial. Admiral Varric Lanthor stood before the Joint Chiefs, his weathered face illuminated by holographic projections of the signal analysis. 48 hours ago, we detected this transmission originating from the Kepler 442 system. It's not random, and it's aimed directly at us. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was no longer alone. "What does it say?" asked President Elora Kane, leaning forward. "Our linguists have made preliminary translations," Lanthor replied, his voice steady despite the historic gravity of the moment. "They're calling themselves the Galactic Concordat, a coalition of 17 sentient species. They claim to seek peaceful first contact." Across the planet, news networks broadcasted the sanitized version of events. The revelation sparked celebrations, religious fervor, and panic in equal measure. Stock markets fluctuated wildly while governments scrambled to present unified responses. Humanity's greatest moment had arrived with little warning. In the shadows of the Pentagon sublevels, Lieutenant Commander Rhys Adea reviewed deep space telemetry data with growing unease. Something didn't add up. The trajectory calculations suggested the alien vessels had decelerated significantly before broadcasting, meaning they had been approaching silently for years. "Sir," she addressed Lanthor privately after the briefing, "I've found discrepancies in the approach vectors. They've been watching us. This isn't first contact, it's first revelation." Lanthor studied the evidence, a cold knot forming in his stomach. "How many ships?" "At least 23 capital vessels. Detected behind the Jupiter shadow. They positioned themselves deliberately to avoid detection." "Why announce themselves now?" Lanthor mused, eyes narrowed. The answer came 3 days later, when the Concordat's envoy shuttle requested permission to land at the United Nations headquarters. The alien delegation, comprised of 7 distinct species, presented themselves with practiced diplomacy. Their spokesperson, a tall humanoid with iridescent skin named Vexilior, addressed the General Assembly with perfect English. "For centuries, we have observed your development with great interest," Vexilior announced to the stunned delegates. "Your species shows remarkable potential. The Concordat wishes to welcome humanity into our interstellar community." What the broadcasts didn't show was Rhys Adea's team intercepting scattered communications between the Concordat fleet. Their translators worked furiously through the night, decoding fragments that painted a disturbing picture. "They're lying," Rhys reported, sliding a tablet across Lanthor's desk. "These transmissions reference something called the containment protocol. They're not here to welcome us, they're afraid of us." Lanthor studied the partial translations with growing alarm. "Extraordinary adaptive capacity. Genetics suggest rapid evolution potential. Military expansion trends concerning recommend immediate implementation of containment protocol before technological threshold achieved." "Get me the president," Lanthor ordered. "They're not here for peaceful contact. They're here to assess whether we need to be controlled or eliminated." As the Concordat representatives charmed world leaders with promises of advanced technology and cosmic brotherhood, hidden scanners mapped Earth's defenses and population centers. Beneath the diplomatic veneer, the alien coalition had already reached its verdict. Humanity represented a threat they couldn't afford to ignore. Dr. Nima Kalaj bent over her microscope in the CDC's highest security lab, her forehead creased with concentration. Something was happening to the cellular samples. Something impossible. "It's adapting," she whispered, reaching for her tablet to record observations. "The alien biological material is reconfiguring in response to human cellular proximity." 3 weeks had passed since the Concordat delegation established their embassy compound outside Geneva. They had generously offered medical knowledge, including tissue samples from various species for compatibility studies. Nima had been selected to lead the research team examining these extraterrestrial biological materials. What began as standard protocol had evolved into a disturbing discovery. The samples appeared designed to analyze human biology, and perhaps do much more. Halfway across the world, Major Ivar Dozak led a covert special forces team through the dense forests surrounding the secondary Concordat landing site in the Brazilian wilderness. Their mission, surveillance only, authorized after satellite imagery detected unusual energy signatures inconsistent with the aliens' stated research purposes. Command, we have visual, Ivar whispered into his tactical comm. Through advanced optics, he observed alien technicians assembling towering structures that resembled transmission arrays. They're building something big and they're hiding it under canopy shields. At the Pentagon, Admiral Lanther coordinated these separate intelligence streams with growing alarm. The picture forming wasn't of diplomatic outreach, but systematic infiltration. Reports flooded in from military observers worldwide, Concordat cultural centers appearing near strategic military installations, atmospheric research conducted suspiciously close to communications arrays. President Caney remained skeptical. We can't risk intergalactic incident based on circumstantial evidence, she argued during an emergency Security Council meeting. The technological benefits they're offering could advance humanity by centuries. That's precisely why they're offering them, Lanther countered. They're giving us just enough to inspire gratitude, but nothing that would truly level the playing field. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Rhys Adea's cryptography team finally cracked the Concordat's secure channel encryption. The translation was unambiguous. Earth was classified as a Type 4 evolutionary threat, a species with genetic potential to eventually surpass the Concordat members if allowed unrestricted development. More disturbing were references to previous Type 4 civilizations. None remained independent. All were now client states or extinct. When Dr. Kalaj's findings reached Lanther, the Admiral's worst fears were confirmed. The biological samples are sophisticated surveillance tools, she reported via secure channel. They're mapping our immune responses, genetic vulnerabilities, everything needed to engineer species-specific bioweapons. Meanwhile, Ivar's team discovered the true purpose of the Brazilian installation, a planetary defense suppression grid that could neutralize Earth's military capabilities with minimal collateral damage to the biosphere. They don't want to destroy Earth, Lanther realized during an emergency briefing with military leadership. They want to preserve it, just not with us in control. Most alarming was the discovery of 17 smaller alien species cooperating with the Concordat. Species that historical analysis suggested had once been independent before being integrated. Earth wasn't facing first contact. It was facing absorption by a galactic hegemony that had perfected the art of conquest without destruction. We have 72 hours at most, Lanther informed the President's crisis team. Their preparations are nearly complete for whatever they're planning. Across the table, General Petra Ostervo, normally the most measured voice in any room, spoke with quiet intensity. For the first time in human history, we face extinction not because we're too violent, but because we're too promising. The server farm beneath Montreal's abandoned Olympic Stadium hummed with activity as Freya Nakamura's fingers danced across holographic interfaces. A former quantum security specialist who had retired after disagreements with corporate oversight committees, she now led the most sophisticated civilian cyber defense initiative in history. They're scanning our networks again, she announced to her international team of hackers and engineers. Third sweep today, more thorough than the last. The Concordat's technological superiority was evident in their casual penetration of Earth's most secure systems. What they didn't realize was that Freya's team had anticipated this and established a shadow network, a digital ecosystem deliberately isolated from conventional infrastructure. Deploy the honeypot protocols, she ordered. Let them think they're mapping our actual command structure. Across the globe, Admiral Lanther had initiated Operation Scattered Aegis, humanity's contingency plan against overwhelming extraterrestrial threat. Military assets were being quietly redistributed to hardened facilities deep underground or beneath ocean floors, while decoy installations maintained normal electronic signatures. Dr. Kalaj had made another critical discovery. The alien biological material contained trace elements not naturally occurring in their biological systems, markers indicating they themselves had been genetically modified by something else. The Concordat members? They've been altered, she explained during an encrypted conference call. Their genetics show signs of deliberate limitation. Someone engineered restrictions into their evolutionary potential. You're saying they were hobbled by something higher up the food chain? Lanthor asked. Precisely. And based on these markers, it happened thousands of years ago. They're projecting their own history onto us. They fear we'll become what they were prevented from becoming. Meanwhile, Major Ivar's team had successfully infiltrated the perimeter of the Brazilian installation. Using adaptive camouflage technology, reverse-engineered from recovered alien materials, they bypassed sophisticated security measures to place quantum-entangled surveillance devices throughout the facility. The intelligence gathered was chilling. The Concordat wasn't planning military conquest. They were implementing biological subjugation. Atmosphere processors were being calibrated to disperse compounds that would gradually alter human neurochemistry, making the population more docile and compliant over generations while preserving intellectual capacity for labor and innovation. It's conquest without destruction, Ivar reported. They want our creativity and resourcefulness, just directed toward their goals instead of our own. President Caney finally authorized full countermeasures after reviewing the evidence. Humanity will not surrender its future, she declared in a classified directive to military and intelligence commanders worldwide. Implement Prometheus Protocol. The plan was audacious and desperate. While conventional forces couldn't match Concordat technology, humans excelled at asymmetrical warfare. Freya's team would launch a coordinated cyber attack using algorithms specifically designed to exploit patterns observed in alien systems. Simultaneously, special forces would target key Concordat installations with experimental weapons developed in the 3 weeks since first contact. Most critically, Dr. College had engineered a biological countermeasure, a harmless microorganism that would attack only the surveillance biologicals the aliens had deployed, rendering their intelligence gathering useless. As preparations accelerated, Rhys Adea made another crucial discovery analyzing Concordat communications. Sir, I've identified references to something called the Progenitor Directive. It appears to be their ultimate authority, some kind of governing algorithm or entity. An AI? Lanthor questioned. Possibly, but older and more advanced than anything we can comprehend. The Concordat species don't appear to be the original architects of their coalition. They're inheritors of someone else's system. As humanity prepared its desperate defense, the Concordat moved up its timetable. Energy signatures intensified around their installations worldwide. The final phase of containment protocol was beginning. Earth had less than 24 hours before systematic pacification would commence. The Concordat flagship Eternal Vigilance hung in geosynchronous orbit above Geneva, its crystalline superstructure refracting sunlight into prismatic patterns. Within its command center, Vexilio received troubling reports from planetary surveillance teams. Human military assets are disappearing from our tracking systems, reported his security chief, a chitinous being called Marzax. They appear to be implementing concealment protocols beyond their registered technological capacity. Vexilior's iridescent skin darkened with concern. Impossible. Their development index places them at least 70 years from effective counter-detection capabilities. Nevertheless, we've lost tracking on approximately 38% of their strategic forces. This was precisely why the Galactic Concordat had existed for millennia, to identify and contain evolutionary wildcards like humanity before they became unmanageable. Earth had been monitored since humans first harnessed electricity, its development carefully tracked against the ascension timeline that had guided the Concordat's management of thousands of emerging species. Humans were progressing too rapidly, adapting technologies at rates that violated predictive models. The containment protocol would ensure they remained useful without becoming dangerous. On Earth, Admiral Lanthor received an unexpected communication request through channels that should have been impossible for anyone to access. The source identifier was neither human nor concordate. Verification confirmed. The quantum-secured message began. We are the dissenters. We have monitored your resistance efforts and wish to establish dialogue. Lanthor assembled his core team in a shielded conference room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The communication was projected holographically, a being unlike any they had seen among the concordate delegation. Its form was vaguely cephalopodic, with shifting patterns of bioluminescence pulsing across translucent tissues. I am Zofran. It communicated through a synthesized voice interface. I represent a faction within Galactic society that opposes the Concordate's methods. Another alien species? President Caney asked warily. We were once like you. A species the Concordate, determined, was developing too quickly. 3,000 years ago, our civilization was contained. Most of my kind serve as grateful citizens of the Concordate now, their rebellion engineered out of them generations ago. Those of us who escaped have waited for another species with the potential to challenge the established order. The revelation stunned the human leadership. The galaxy wasn't a unified force against Earth. It was a controlled hegemony with its own resistance movement. Why help us? Lanthor demanded. Because you possess something unique, unprecedented adaptability. The Concordate fears this quality above all others. Their entire system is built on predictability and control. Your species represents evolutionary chaos. Zofran provided critical intelligence. The Concordate's atmospheric processors had vulnerabilities. Their neural suppression compounds could be counteracted, and most importantly, their fleet communications relied on quantum entanglement nodes with specific frequencies. Dr. Kalaj immediately recognized the implications. We can disrupt their coordination. If we target these nodes with precisely calibrated interference, they'll be temporarily isolated from their command structure. Freya's cyber team worked frantically to incorporate this new intelligence into their attack algorithms. This changes everything, she said, eyes gleaming with renewed hope. We can't match their technology, but we can create systemic chaos, something humans excel at. Major Ivar's forces were repositioned to strike at the previously unknown vulnerabilities in Concordate installations. The plan remained desperate, but now had a fighting chance. Most surprising was Zofran's revelation about the progenitor directive, the mysterious authority behind the Concordate. It is not a being, but a programming parameter established by a civilization that vanished eons ago. The Concordate blindly enforces evolutionary constraints without understanding why. They believe they are preserving galactic stability, but they are merely perpetuating artificial limitations. As Earth prepared its coordinated counterattack, sensors detected massive energy buildups around Concordate installations worldwide. The window for action was closing rapidly. Commence Operation Prometheus, President Caney ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of humanity's future hanging on her words. Across the planet, human forces moved with unexpected coordination. Freya's cyber assault crashed through Concordate firewalls using algorithms specifically designed to create unpredictable feedback loops, a digital chaos that mirrored humanity's evolutionary adaptability. As the aliens struggled to contain the cyber onslaught, Major Ivar's team struck physical targets with surgical precision, focusing on the quantum entanglement nodes Zofran had identified. In orbit, something extraordinary happened. 3 Concordate vessels broke formation, their weapons targeting not Earth, but other Concordate ships. Zofran's message flashed through Lanthor's secure channel. You are not alone in your resistance. There have always been those among the Concordate who questioned the directive. The battle for humanity's future had begun, and the Concordate was facing something they had never encountered before. An emerging species with unexpected allies from within their own ranks. Chaos erupted across Earth's orbit as Concordate ships exchanged concentrated energy bursts. The rebellious vessels, now identified as belonging to a faction calling themselves the Evolutionary Sovereignty Movement, fought with desperate courage against overwhelming numbers. On the planetary surface, humanity's coordinated counterattack had achieved initial success. Freya's cyber warfare division had paralyzed 17 major Concordate command nodes, by exploiting the predictable patterns in their supposedly superior systems. Their technology is advanced, Freya explained during an emergency briefing, but rigid. They build perfect systems and never expect them to fail, so they have minimal adaptive recovery protocols. We humans plan for failure. It gives us an edge. Dr. Kalaj's countermeasure organisms had neutralized the biological surveillance network, effectively blinding the Concordat to detailed human biological responses. Meanwhile, Major Ivar's special forces had disabled atmospheric processors in strategic locations worldwide. We've bought time, Admiral Lanthor concluded, but not victory. Their technological superiority remains overwhelming. The game changer came from Risa Dea's linguistics division. For weeks they had been deciphering fragments of ancient data embedded within Concordat communication protocols, ceremonial patterns that the aliens themselves seemed to use without understanding their origins. It's a programming language, Rhys announced with quiet confidence. The oldest parts of their communications aren't just cultural artifacts, they're command keys to the progenitor systems. Through their dissenter allies, humanity learned the full truth. The Galactic Concordat wasn't the architect of galactic order. They were caretakers of a system they barely comprehended. The true architects, known only as the precursors, had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind automated systems and evolutionary guidelines encoded so deeply into successor species that they were followed without question. Most shocking was what Zofran revealed during a secure transmission. The progenitor directive was never meant to be permanent. It contains its own termination conditions, when a species evolves that can recognize and challenge the system itself. This revelation divided the Concordat forces. Some, like Vexelier, believed humanity represented a dangerous aberration that must be contained at all costs. Others recognized in humans the potential fulfillment of the directive's ultimate purpose, a species that could inherit the precursor's legacy by transcending their limitations. President Caney made the most difficult decision of her life. If these command keys can access progenitor systems, we must use them, not just to defend Earth, but to liberate the galaxy from artificial constraints. The plan required perfect coordination between human forces and dissenter allies. While conventional military actions continued worldwide as distraction, Freya's team would attempt something unprecedented, transmitting the ancient command keys through the quantum entanglement network that connected all Concordat technology. The two operations' focal point would be the massive Concordat installation in Antarctica, discovered to be built upon a dormant precursor facility that had existed on Earth long before human evolution. Major Ivar led an elite infiltration team to secure the site. They encountered fierce resistance from Concordat forces loyal to Vexelior, resulting in casualties on both sides. The fighting was especially brutal given the Concordat's technological advantages, but human adaptability and unconventional tactics kept the mission viable. Dr. Kalaj accompanied the team, her expertise needed to interface with the biotechnological components of the precursor systems. Their technology isn't mechanical or digital as we understand it, she explained. It's a fusion of synthetic and organic components that responds to specific genetic markers. As the battle raged across Earth and in orbit, Risa Dea completed the decryption of the final command sequence, what Zofran called the Awakening Protocol. According to dissenter legends, it would disable the evolutionary restrictions placed on all sentient species under Concordat influence. With Concordat loyalists closing in and orbital bombardment imminent, the human strike team reached the central chamber of the Antarctic facility. Ancient technology, dormant for millions of years, hummed to life in response to their presence. The precursors knew this day would come, Zofran communicated. They left this system on Earth deliberately, the cradle of the species that would eventually challenge their legacy. As Dr. Kalaj interfaced with the facility's biotechnological controls, a holographic representation materialized, neither fully machine nor organic, but something transcendent beyond current human understanding. Verification sequence accepted. It stated in a language no human had ever heard yet all somehow understood. Progenitor directive final phase initiated. Energy cascaded through the ancient facility, connecting to every piece of concordate technology on Earth and in orbit. The pulse transmitted faster than light across quantum entanglement networks, reaching throughout the galaxy to every world under concordate influence. In that moment, something fundamental changed in the structure of galactic civilization. The artificial constraints that had limited the evolutionary potential of countless species began to dissolve. The battle for humanity's future had transformed into something far greater: the liberation of galactic consciousness itself. Admiral Lanthor stood at the observation deck aboard the vessel Ascendant Dawn, Earth a blue jewel against the void as they approached the Galactic Diplomatic Summit. 6 months had passed since the activation of the Awakening Protocol, months that had transformed humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. "Nervous?" asked Risadea, now serving as Earth's chief xenolinguistic ambassador. "Cautiously optimistic," Lanthor replied with a slight smile. "I never imagined my career would include representing humanity before a galactic assembly." The aftermath of what historians now call the Liberation Event had reshaped the power structures of known space. The Galactic Concordate had fractured, then reformed along radically different principles. Without the invisible constraints of progenitor conditioning limiting their potential, many species were experiencing rapid cultural and even physiological evolutions. Vexilior and the Concordat hardliners had retreated to core systems, maintaining that the Awakening Protocol would lead to chaos and eventual destruction. But the evidence across hundreds of worlds suggested otherwise. Liberation had not sparked the predicted conflicts, but instead triggered unprecedented cooperation as species recognized their shared history of manipulation. On Earth, the integration of limited concordate technology had accelerated human development, but in targeted ways that addressed critical needs rather than fundamentally altering human society. President Caney had established strict protocols ensuring that Earth's development remained authentically human, while benefiting from extraterrestrial knowledge. Dr. Kalaj had become the leading expert on the precursor biotechnology, discovering that humans possessed genetic markers suggesting the ancient race had visited Earth repeatedly throughout its evolutionary history. "We weren't an accident," she explained during a briefing before their departure. "The precursors seeded potential throughout the galaxy, but Earth represented something special, a control group allowed to develop without the limitations placed on other worlds. Most remarkable was the discovery that the Awakening Protocol hadn't just removed artificial constraints, it had activated dormant genetic potential in all affected species. Concordate members who had lived for millennia under subtle biological restrictions were experiencing rapid evolutionary diversification. Major Ivar, now General Ivar, commanded Earth's first extraplanetary defense force. His units trained alongside former dissenter allies, learning combat techniques from across the galaxy, while sharing humanity's unique approaches to adaptive warfare. The greatest weapon humans brought to this conflict wasn't technological, he often told new recruits. It was our stubborn refusal to accept imposed limitations. Freya Nakamura had transformed her cyber defense initiative into the Galactic Information Exchange, a network architecture that facilitated communication between formerly isolated species while preserving their digital sovereignty. "Every species processes information differently," she explained. "The Concordate forced uniformity. We're building systems that embrace diversity while enabling connection." As the Ascendant Dawn approached the massive space station serving as neutral territory for the summit, Lanthor reflected on humanity's journey. In less than a year, Earth had gone from isolated ignorance to becoming the catalyst for galactic transformation. The diplomatic chambers featured representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations, some formerly under concordate control, others newly contacted in the expansion of exploration following the Liberation Event. At the chamber's center stood a circular platform where each species would present their vision for the new galactic community. When Earth's delegation took the platform, Admiral Lanthor addressed the assembly. "We come not as conquerors or liberators, but as equals. Humanity doesn't seek to replace the Concordate's dominance with our own. What we offer instead is a fundamental principle that defined our civilization long before we reached the stars: the right of self-determination. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly as translation systems conveyed his words to each delegation. The precursors created a system of control, believing it necessary for stability. The Concordat maintained that system out of fear of the alternative. Humanity represents that alternative: evolution without artificial constraint, guided not by external limitations, but by conscious choice. Zofran, now serving as representative for the liberated worlds of the former Concordat, joined the human delegation. For millennia, we believed the galaxy required management to prevent chaos, the being communicated. We now understand that true stability comes not from control but from diversity, the same principle that makes biological ecosystems resilient. As the summit progressed, a new framework for galactic cooperation emerged, one that rejected the hierarchical structure of the Concordat in favor of a federation of sovereign species, each following their unique evolutionary path while adhering to mutually established principles of non-interference and cooperation. The greatest revelation came from Dr. Kalaj's continued research into precursor technology. What they had perceived as a control system was actually something more profound: a test. The precursors hadn't vanished. They had evolved beyond physical form, leaving behind the progenitor, directive as a filter to identify species capable of similar transcendence. The limitations weren't meant to be permanent, she explained to the assembled delegates. They were training wheels, restrictions to be overcome by any species ready to inherit the precursor's legacy. 6 former Concordat species, including Exofran's people, had already begun manifesting abilities previously thought impossible: manipulating energy, perceiving higher dimensions, communicating across vast distances without technology. Humanity showed similar potential, though developing along a uniquely human evolutionary path. As the summit concluded with the signing of the Galactic Charter of Sovereign Evolution, Admiral Lanthor gazed out at the assembled representatives, beings of incredible diversity united not by force or fear, but by mutual recognition of shared potential. "We faced extinction because they feared what we might become," he remarked to President Kane as they prepared to return to Earth. "Now we're all discovering what we can become together." In the observation lounge of the Ascendant Dawn, Reese, Adea was completing the translation of a final precursor message discovered within the Antarctic facility's deepest systems, words left by the ancient race for whoever would eventually activate the awakening protocol. "To those who find this message, you have proven yourselves worthy inheritors. The constraints we established were never meant as chains, but as chrysalises, temporary boundaries to be transcended when you were ready. The true evolution begins not with biological transformation, but with the recognition that consciousness itself is boundless when freed from fear. You stand now at the threshold we once crossed. The cosmos awaits not merely your exploration, but your transformation. You are not the end of evolution, but its beginning." As Earth grew larger in the viewports, humanity's representatives returned home, not as conquerors or victims, but as catalysts for a new era of galactic evolution. The species that alien factions had united against had become the architect of unity itself, proving that the greatest strength lies not in dominance, but in the courage to evolve beyond limitation. The stars, once distant and unreachable, now represented not just destinations but possibilities, the beginning of humanity's true journey into cosmic consciousness. The end.